I would like to tell you a story. It's a story about an ancient king who controlled most of the known world. And this ancient king had a, This ancient king had a slave that was his assistant. This slave became burdened for the people group he came from and the nation that he came from. And so he asked the king if he could go back and help rebuild their economy, rebuild their defenses. And the king granted him favor and sent him back and was able to go. And when he got there, he found a capital city. Can't hear. He found a capital city that was in ruins. He found a people that had no economic activity, and he found an environment with no religious anything going on. And so he began not going to political people, not going to politicians, but he asked for the people to help him rebuild their economy, rebuild their defenses. And those people engaged him and embarked and started rebuilding. That man was a slave and risked his life for a nation that no longer existed and a people that most had forgotten. That man could and should be me and you. And we're free, living in a free nation, able to make a choice that together we can rebuild the foundations of this great nation by bringing truth, integrity, and sacrifice to Washington and to our own personal lives. We cannot and we must not lose hope. We must begin to reclaim and restore our country to the fundamentals upon which it was created. The main political parties have created a fissure. They have created a small crack in our difference of opinion and have created a canyon between us, the American people. And lost in that canyon are real issues and real common sense solutions. Lost in that canyon are issues where we can find agreement. We must begin building upon a common foundation like protecting our borders, a common foundation like balancing our budget, and a common foundation of creating jobs, common ground, and common sense. As we focus on the border issue, isn't it ironic that the federal government has, for all intents and purposes, closed down the Gulf of Mexico, controlling who and what goes in and out? Now compare the government's coastline protection with that of our national borders. Compare the complete Gulf shutdown to a half-hearted attempt of our government to protect our national borders. They allow guns, drugs, and even humans to be trafficked with mere token resistance. On one hand, you have a coastline that is shut down, and on the other hand, you have a border that is wide open because our government chooses it to be that way. The United States government's main responsibility is to restrain evil, promote justice, and preserve order. Clearly, it has failed. Our borders show that at the most basic level, our government is broken. We must protect our borders, we must protect our citizens, and we must do it now. And we must do it before any immigration reform is passed in Washington, D.C. We must treat a war zone like a war zone and send our troops to defend the borders of this nation. We must demand that the agencies that are assigned to work the borders do their job and work together to solve what amounts to an issue of national sovereignty. Financially, our nation is in debt to the tune of $13 trillion. $1+ trillion in spending this year, more of the same next year. The debt crisis, though, is not our own. It is affecting every industrialized nation on the globe, almost all of them. While other countries are reducing the size of their debt, reducing the size of their government, we are expected to tolerate massive government spending, banking bailouts, and new government programs. America has always been a global leader in democracy, finance, and industry. We should be leading other countries and showing them how to regain financial and civil stability. And if you wonder where we're headed as a nation, you need to look no further than Greece, a country that chose not to sacrifice and now depends on other nations to bail them out. If our country does not change and make tough choices now, we will lose our sovereignty just like Greece. We must make decisions that reflect the goals of a balanced budget and a stronger, smaller federal government. When we make those decisions, tough decisions, it will affect every one of us. The third place that we can begin to rebuild the foundations of this great nation and find some common ground, I believe, is in job creation. Nearly 3 years into this economic disaster, and Congress has still not addressed the most fundamental of all weaknesses of our economy, jobs. And although Congress cannot create jobs, it could and should be a conduit to creating an environment that is favorable for people to hire and to start new businesses. Unfortunately, they have not. As Congress continues to go about its politics as usual, they continue to waste tax dollars, creating huge new bureaucracies like the health care bill, and ignoring employees and employers alike. How out of touch is an agenda that spends trillions of bailout dollars and does little to consider the American worker, and then gives us the largest tax increase in the history of America? We have lost confidence in Congress. The confidence level of business, investors, entrepreneurs is in the tank. And as citizens and as voters, we must be the catalyst for change and for job creation by getting government out of our pockets and out of the way of the American people. We must establish and encourage an environment that sends this message to the American people in the world. It is safe to invest in America. We need international investment dollars in our country. They will go somewhere, and they should be going here instead of it up to other nations. We cannot let foreign nations reap the reward of our government's irresponsibility. And I want to remind you that this did not just happen over the last 2 years. These problems had started decades ago. In my lifetime, I have watched the power shift from Democrats to Republicans and now back to Democrats. I have watched them squander resources, and I have seen nothing change. Both political parties have chosen the path of bailouts and deficit spending. Both have oppressed our children and grandchildren with incredible national debt. And 3 years into this crisis, Congress is still not focused on what's best to grow our economy, so we can at least reduce the burden of this debt. Do you have confidence? Do you have confidence that the same political parties that got us into this mess will have the courage and desire to make the changes and fix these problems? I don't think so. I know I don't. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. I'm asking you to do something different and stop the insanity. William Faulkner once said that the man who removes a mountain begins by carrying away small stones. And he was right. We must begin. I am trying to hammer home that we are at the beginning of doing something differently. And I'm asking you to begin by electing me, a conservative independent, as your representative from Mississippi's 1st District, a husband, father of 3, school teacher, deacon, house painter. I am committed to making the tough choices and doing what is best for our nation and our next generation, free from the lobby and influence that unfortunately is the backbone of career politicians. From the beginning, I have promised that I will limit myself to 3 two-year terms. I have surrounded around me people of integrity that will keep me accountable to the vision that I've laid out for the rebuilding of this great nation, based on truth, integrity, and sacrifice. May we bless and honor God by the future choices that we do make. Thank you very much.